And welcome everybody. My name is Dave POW Tabain. I'm here with Dr. Verena Raschke-Cheema, and hopefully I said that right, and she's an absolute superstar and a phenomenal person who's been in my life and in the lives of many other people. So on this podcast, guys, the road less travel is I like to introduce you to people that are doing amazing things, doing incredible things for other people and services that they provide. And Dr. V, or Dr. V, I like to call her, she's on the podcast today. And Dr. V, how are you doing this morning?
I'm excellent. Thanks for inviting me, Dave. Absolute pleasure to talking to you and your tribe.
Awesome, mate. And it's great to have you here. And I'm glad that we finally got on a podcast because, with these podcasts, I've only done a few, but I make sure they're super, I choose people that are super empowering and those that have actually played a bit of part in my life. And you certainly have done that. And Dr. V, you've got a bit of an accent there. Where are you from? Tell everyone where your accent's from.
I'm from Austria originally, coming from really grew up in the middle of the Alps, and then went to the city in Vienna where I studied Nutritional Sciences. Then I came to Australia, Sydney first in 2003 to do parts of my studies. This is where I met now my husband, who is Canadian. So I have a bit of a funny mixture of, my German mother tongue, Canadian, married to Canadian. We lived in New Zealand for a while as well before we came and returned to Australia. So yeah, the accent is all over the show.
Definitely well-traveled. And guys, listen up, because the knowledge that Dr. Verena is going to be discussing on this podcast with me today is going to blow your mind. And the reason why I've got this podcast together is Dr. Verena, I've been talking about her for the last couple of years after my first experience with her and discussing the things that Dr. Verena can address in one session and have that breakthrough and get to the cause is quite phenomenal. In today's world, a lot of people, think that everything's compartmentalized, or I don't even know how to say that word, but, go here for this thing and go that for that thing. With Verena, she talks through the emotional, the physical, the mental, the nutritional side of things, the chemical side, what's going on in your body. And to have that in one session is absolutely life-changing. And I'm a product of that myself. Seeing Verena a couple of years ago, now that was an absolute game changer. I tell you what, I'll open up a little bit later in this podcast, but I was a mess and I knew it, but I couldn't get the right help, but I knew something was up. And it was a time where I was actually in Bali, Verena, where I saw one of your clients, Bernie, who was watching our retreat. We're in Bali running this retreat, and Bernie was watching our retreat, and she come over and had a chat and said she loved the energy of the place. Now, to be honest, I was dying inside at that retreat. I was wrecked and I was showing up for people, trying to give my best, but I was burnt out and I was absolutely cooked. And Bernie just happened to mention your name. And it was crazy because I forgot your name, but I always had in the back of my mind, I've got to see this lady. I've got to see this lady. And it wasn't until I was sitting at Hungry Monkey down in Kiama, I sat down, and here in front of me is Bernie. And I looked up and I was like, Bernie, what's that chick's name? And Verena, she reminded me of your name. And I was like, I've got to get myself to a session with her, because at that point I was desperate. And anyone out there who's listening to this podcast will probably know Dave Powell. He's traveling around, he's doing these things, got this kids books and all that kind of stuff. I tell you what, I've gone through my own battles myself. I've been in the trenches, you could say. I've gone through the shit as well, and everything that I do, I just do because I appreciate what's been done to me in the past and how it's helped me, and I try and pass that on as well. So what I will say is I'm not perfect. I've gone through times I felt broken. I felt all these different feelings, emotions, and all that kind of stuff go on. But the one thing that I do believe is we must stay in motion. We must go out there and find ways to create a better lifestyle and look after ourselves. And Dr. Verena, you were quite modest before when you talked about your studies and that, but you've done a PhD in nutrition. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I did a PhD in Nutritional Sciences, first master, then PhD. And my PhD really focused on indigenous food cultures and their contribution to health, because I always was wondering, why are we so sick? That whole nutrition transition, that meaning our food habits changed so much, since countries particularly got colonized. It's huge. You know, we have epidemics we have never seen. And even 10 years ago, when you think again, we've never seen, we didn't even know really what ADHD was. We didn't know gluten intolerance. Go back when we were kids, we never heard that word almost, right? And now it's normal. Now it's normal.
Lactose as well.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, hey, and I don't even know if I still know what ADHD is and all that kind of stuff. I knew when I was a kid, they tried to put me on drugs, but my parents didn't allow it. My dad actually got prescribed what was it called? Anyway, it's a crazy drug that got prescribed that 94% of people committed suicide on. And it was more addictive than heroin. It was a trial drug for a stomach ulcer before they treated it with antibiotics.
Wow.
Crazy, sent him into his first breakdown. And so my background of that is I saw these things go on, how the detrimental effects that all these different pills and potions can do for you when we don't address the cause. So there's something else that you do as well is Neuro-Train. You're a neurotrainer and a kinesiologist. So in a simple way to explain to people what that is, could you just give everyone a bit of a rundown what that does?
Absolutely. So I really was interested after just working in clinic with nutrition only. I could only get so far with really helping people with their symptoms, meaning when they went off their nutritional protocol, the symptoms very often came back and some of them went back to where they were before. So, and with my own journey, like you said, you had yours, people also need to know it's the same with clinicians, doctors, practitioners. We have our own health journeys, and that's where we learn and evolve and can share that with our clients. It makes us actually better practitioners. So with my journey with my second son, who was absolutely, and he was a healthy boy, but he had panic attacks at night. I couldn't settle him down. He was waking every 1 to 2 hours. I'm like, this is not normal. Although every pediatrician and GP would say, Verena, he's healthy, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, I actually worry because I can't settle my own child down in the middle of the night and something is going on. So long story short, I lost a twin in utero with him fairly early, and it was working with a Neuro-Training Kinesiologist back then, who became my teacher after that experience of the loss of the womb is quite profound for a child in utero, because the heartbeat of the second child that's always there is lost. The child doesn't hear it anymore. Wow. So that by itself is a huge stress for a child. Yeah. And then of course it also depends what emotional stress the mother has around that, because in utero the child does emotions and stress response with them through the mother. So that really free neurotraining sessions, and that my son slept through the night. He had no panic attacks anymore. And that taught me, oh my God, I got to study this. So what is it? Neurotraining kinesiology is really where I apply neurological response testing, where I access the feedback loop between the muscles and the subconscious brain. And I do that with the support of references to identify and resolve the mental, emotional, and physical root cause behind the symptoms the person experiences. And I then reprogram the subconscious mind in relation to the stressors I identified with various corrections that can then lead to a repair, recuperation process on all levels, bit by bit. Yeah, it's like layering it's like peeling an onion. The layers of the onion are peeled. So it's not that, I do one session and we get to you become this amazing healed self. I'm not, a person like that. It's the process. We do it together, because if I would do that straight away within one session, I could send actually somebody in a total healing crisis. So it's really, we work in whatever wherever, like how far and how quick the person, and particularly the mind and brain, can go with. So it's really where you start, exactly what the person can handle. We go layer by layer. So it depends, each session is different. You may like peel really thick layers back and a few at a time, but you really notice the difference. And of course, you know, the younger you are, like for example, a child, the quicker those issues are resolved because you have less baggage.
Wow, it's absolutely incredible. So for everyone out there listening to this, I can contest that how incredible these sessions are. And with Verena, obviously with her knowledge, her background, and that she has the ability to connect with people in a way that you wouldn't typically get. And I will say with these sessions, it feels like instead of just rearranging the deck chairs on a Titanic, which is kind of like trying to, you know, a lot of people when it comes to some things, for example, nutrition, they're just like, oh, it's got to count my calories. Where for this is like, we're changing the whole, like instead of thinking inside the box, we are changing the box. We're changing this perspective, changing the response to that body. And it's absolutely mind blowing for someone to come in and experience these sessions. So I know it's a lot to explain in those in one short thing, but the impact of that, Verena, I've experienced it myself. And hey, a little quick thought that I had when you explained that is, imagine if every single school had a neuro trainer at the school. How much do you think that would actually help with learning in the school grounds?
Well, it would help a lot, you know, because we would basically look at, every neurotrainer would basically look at, okay, what are the stressors of that child? Yeah, so we can test through the brain functions. Some kids, a lot of kids that come into my clinic that have gut issues because, you know, the brain and through the gut-brain connection, our learning is very much fueled. Ability to learn and concentrate is not fueled only by our gut health, but what's going on in our brain and mind and the stressors. So we can look at what are the stresses, what brain functions have a stress on them, and hence learning and understanding, which we actually have a brain function for, is impacted. So I always say, if we start very early and assist kids in becoming the best version of themselves by getting rid of the stresses they had through the early development and in their, you know, through parents even, the more they're going to thrive as adults.
Yeah. And would you say also too, the more the capacity to learn rather than being full up or in that stress response? Because we all know when we're stressed and we're shut off, you know, we're in that mood, you could say as well, because that stress does trigger a bit of a mood. Now, our ability to take on and retain information, all that kind of stuff. So I know you threw you on the spot there regarding imagining having a neuro trainers at schools, but I think that's kind of something for the future. So these kids that have exposed to stress, because I work with a lot of at-risk kids. Yeah. And a lot of these kids, you know, like some teachers think the best way to get through to them is just to punish them. And so here you have this kid who's stressed, he's got things going on, and then you got a teacher who takes on no consideration about their background, says, oh, they're a bad kid, labels them as a bad kid, and then punishes them for it, and then brands them at them, and then tells them, you're a bad kid, you're going to go nowhere. And, you know, for a bit of an example, that was what was told to me when I was going through school as well, so many times. And, you know, for me, it wasn't that I was trying to be a bad kid or anything, like maybe I like to talk a lot. But in regards to that, it's quite interesting. So I just throwing it out there, it would be incredible to have that go into the school system, because that would be an absolute game changer for these kids.
Absolutely. Yep. Agree.
Yeah. Any points you want to add to that? Like,
I would even make it earlier. I really highly suggest that if you have children, you know, even post-birth is actually the best. Or, you know, even if they're a bit older before they start school, because the first 7 years of life are absolutely critical. So kind of before you start school as well. If you have kids, give birth, take them to a neurotraining kinesiologist, because, and people would say, well, why, Verena? They have just been born. Well, because conception in utero, you know, we take on all those genetic patterns. You know, there is a lot of stress in most families already when women are pregnant. You get rid of all of those stresses and limitations.
Absolutely incredible. And for a few people listening right now, it's probably mind-blowing that you can work on these things so young. But the thing is we're packing it all up and waiting till we're 30 or 40 to have that bloody meltdown.
That's right.
Let's deload it. And so like on that topic there, we were talking about stress right now. A big topic right now is everyone talks about stress management, all this kind of stuff. Verena, from working with you and what I've learned from over the years as well is, we can be mentally stressed through, by seeing situations and giving too much of our power away to certain things. So like a level 2 stressor gets a level 2 response and we're wasting like 8 stress units on it. But also with the body, when the body is in a stress freeze, what I call fight, flight, or freeze kind of mode, because I was definitely in a freeze mode when I saw you. Yeah. I was capable of all these things and I knew it all, but I kept freezing. There's something holding me back. And I knew it was subconscious. I knew it was in my body. I didn't feel right. And these things really, like you could say, were like a handbrake, and, before I saw you, I had a bit of a feeling that, the people that make it furthest in life aren't the ones that always have the best things lined up for them, but they're the ones that can release those mental handbrakes as they come across them, and allow themselves to thrive and, step into that power kind of thing. I would say I'm not even perfect now. I can't wait to book in for a session with you. But when it comes to stress, can you just touch on a bit about stress and, like what experiences you've had with some people, and also like what sort of happens when we do become stressed on a body level?
Yeah, so the body level, most of us have heard about and know. So it's really, we know that stress, triggers that chemical response through the adrenal cortex that can go into overwhelm, because our autonomic nervous system is very often imbalanced, can't handle the stress. The rest and digest state shuts down, and the fight and flight response starts kicking in, because it's a natural survival response, where the body just goes into a chemical change to enable us that stress response. But what is not healthy is then when we stay in this fight, flight, stress response for too long, of course. And then when we can't, because the body can only maintain fight, flight response for a certain period of time, if we actually realize that the situation we are in and the challenge, stress, does not change, and I'm going to give you examples in a few seconds, is that the body then goes into a freeze, we call it, and that means that we are not kind of locked up in a freeze there. What we really mean by freeze is that something in your body gets compromised, so that could be a mineral that's say magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that helps you to relax, to be in a rest and digest state. But if your mind brain can't actually relax anymore, say, for example, you grew up in a family where you always had to walk on eggshells because mom got angry really easily and dad was never really much around. He was working a lot. So you figured out at a certain age, okay, I don't want to upset mom. I don't want her to shout at me again or even hit me. So I'm just going to walk on eggshells and be very careful about what I say, how I respond, or maybe, respond to her. So what happens right there in that situation? You cannot express certain values of yours anymore. And values are everything, because this is who we are as humans. We are beings who want to express certain values. And this is then how we feel when we can express certain values, because those feelings are our emotions. So coming back to our example, I cannot feel validated, loved, connected, accepted, and worthy anymore when I'm in a household where I have to walk on eggshells. So that may be until I move out at the age of 18. So now I can run my own show, my own life. I'm an adult. But what I have actually not learned in the 20 years of my formative years is I don't really know what the concept really of expressing worthiness, what that is like. I never got validated by my mom. I don't really feel I have a very authentic relationship with her. I don't feel connected. And I never could be relaxed at home because I was always walking on eggshells. So I put, my mindset to my magnesium, well, we're going to put you on ice. We're going to freeze you because there's no way you can be relaxed at home anyway. So magnesium is still compromised and in the freezer section as an adult. Yeah. And then you walk through life with having challenges in relationships, not feeling worthy, which is an underlying stressor all the time, and always being constantly actually stressed about being authentic and really expressing yourself authentically, because you could never, ever do that for 20 years. So this is already here a huge compromise that through your mental emotional stressors and those values you can't express, that will affect your physiology and will bring about physical symptoms. And that child that we just created a little case study here will have already symptoms for sure in teenage years.
Yeah, so like things like anxiety, depression, you know, even shyness or even relationship.
Absolutely. You know, could be that child, you know, is probably very high likelihood to being bullied in school because of the core strength of, I feel worthy, I can express my authentic self, I don't need to walk on eggshells and wait for somebody else, you know, to bully me. I'm strong in who I am. If I am that child that is strong in who I am already in teenage years, even in primary school, I'm not going to get bullied. So
you're not going to let it in.
No, you're not going to, like, you know, bullies pick weak children.
Yes.
So otherwise, you know, you're not going to be able to bully them. So then we have symptoms that could arise is headaches that become chronic, constipation or diarrhea could be there early, you know, having tummy aches a lot, females having problems with reproductive health, you know, menstruation, skin issues can arise, and definitely anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a deep one. So like stress from that response, and, you know, like, I guess the benefits of coming in and having a neuro-training sort of kinesiology session is addressing it so you don't carry this stuff throughout life. And obviously, you know, it's like having a shower. You know, you can have a shower once, but you know, you're still going to need another bloody shower down the track. So obviously it's about peeling those layers. But the wild thing, Verena, is, you know, for me, when I do these 30-day challenges and I travel around and work with so many people, the biggest change people make is not the food they eat, the specific food or whatever it is, or how many calories or whatever it is, or what they're doing training wise. The change that happens within when they actually reassess their life and how they see it, and look at all the stuff they've been exposed to as a kid and actually address it, you know, and be aware of certain things and do make that choice to make, you know, different changes with it, and actually understand that, you know, like, they don't have to keep repeating the shit that's been done to them. You know, and I have this bit of the bit of a saying I touched about in the Power Man stuff for all the kids with bullying and touching on all this sort of stuff. And by the way, you know, with people think with bullying and empowerment, they're like, oh, you know, let's eradicate all bullies. Well, guess what? That's unrealistic. They're going to be there. It's human nature for people to pick on people that are weaker, especially with people who have been hurt people, things like that. You want to be bully proof. You want to be, I call it also unfuckwithable, where no matter what they say, you don't let it in. You can handle whatever life throws at you. And that's the big message around Power Man, is having these kids that are resilient and can take on. And obviously, you know, we want to minimize as much as possible, but also too, you know, sometimes we learn through that pressure, you know, and we want kids to be able to handle anything. So, which is pretty wild with stress. Now, in regards to stress, I want to touch a little bit more on, you know, a lot of people think stress is only mental, you know, but there's also the emotional trying to stress that we're touching on. What happens over a period of time, for example, if somebody stays in that stress response? You know, we have chats in the past where when your body's stressed, all your blood goes to the extremities away from your digestion, which then affects your digestion. Is that correct?
That's right. So when we are in fight flight too long, the body is basically just bathing in stress hormones all the time. So what happens is, as you said correctly, your digestion shuts down because all the blood, you know, goes to the the
your arms,
organs.
your legs.
What do you need for survival? You need your heart, you need your brain, and you gotta have the extremities to run. That's it. Digestion is not important for survival. That's exactly right. So oxygen is conserved. You go into cellular dehydration. That by itself over time causes massive inflammation. You know, you just have so much more glucose that's mobilized to keep you running. Well, guess what? That will be stored in fat because you're actually not physically running and exercising that off. You also produce far too much estrogen all the time, and your thyroid function is going to go down. What's the result out of that? Your sleep quality is going to go down. Your body and brain are not detoxifying well again. You're going to get really fatigued. And because of that, you then enter that vicious cycle that you so want to get out of is, I'm too tired and too brain foggy to exercise. I can't be bothered by like eating healthy. You know, because you are not thinking clearly and because you're so in this fight flight response, you just repeating your most challenging mental and emotional behaviors because it's more challenging to be aware of it and step out of them. And as I said before, your body gets to start getting really inflamed. You get mineral and vitamin deficient because minerals and vitamins are very much dependent on a balanced autonomic nervous system, which is your stress response system. And because you're not in that rest and digest state, you will not absorb a lot of minerals and vitamins anymore. It doesn't actually matter how much you supplement them. And that's when the disease state and weight gain starts to happen.
Dis-ease. And also on that too, that's where people find themselves constantly emotionally eating, even though they know better. Their body's craving that glucose. It wants quick energy. How do we get it? High calorie foods. And so anyone out there listening, to understand this and to be being open to this stuff is a great start. If you're thinking about, if you're struggling with emotional eating, you're overweight, you're stressed, you know that your upbringing wasn't the easiest. You did have all these sort of things. I want to open your eyes up to the fact that you can get to the bottom of this. You can change your life. You can, even work with Dr. Verena or a neurotrainer, kinesiologist, and actually get to the cause thing. Because once you get to that and you sort of, unravel that onion, you are then working from a better space. You kind of like you're, how can you say, you're working on the program, the computer program running the whole thing. Rather than just upgrading your mouse or whatever you want to call it, or your keyboard, you're getting to the core, the hard drive, you could say, or on that kind of stuff. And that's like with our subconscious. There's this old quote saying that, what's that old quote, Verena? You might remember. It's like, our subconscious will direct our life and we'll call it fate. All the things we're programming with, I don't think that's the correct quote, but it's kind of like we have all these primal things. It's like the operating system behind what we see, like our conscious mind is like 5% of our brain or something. And so it's really important to go and address these things. And a lot of people probably don't even know like what we're talking about here, but at least you're exposing yourself to it, because this is where you have the true breakthroughs, the real stuff. And that's where with these challenges I run, it's like the real change happens within.
Absolutely.
And then from there, you're in a better space to do everything. Everything becomes easier. Everything becomes more effortless. So anyone out there who's felt that eating, training, even relationships has been too hard, you put it in too hard basket, or it's been an uphill battle, get to the bottom of it. Have that shift. Verena can help you out there and watch your life unfold for the better. So Verena, on stress.
Yes.
What happens to the gut? Let's go into specifics in regards to that, because, a lot of kids these days have gut issues very early on. I myself struggle with some gut issues and I would say it's also stress-based. I did have some issues where I took too much Panadol on a flight to the UK once, a bit of a freak accident. But you got to the bottom of that pretty quick. In regards to gut health, the brain-gut connection, a lot of people hear about it. A lot of people, there's someone I was even referring to, chatting to the other day, they had no idea that depression was linked to your gut health. Verena, what's the link? And tell us a little bit about the gut health and what are some gold nuggets you've got for us?
The gut-brain connection is basically just a two-way communication system. It's very easy, where the brain and the gut basically are connected through that vagus nerve or vagal nerve, which is basically the biggest nerve in our body, and it starts in your brain and goes all the way into your body, branches out in all the organs and glands, except for the reproductive ones. And of course, you also have branches going into all like the digestive organs, from liver all the way to the colon. And what is very important now is that this vagus nerve is really your information superhighway between the gut and the brain. And through hormones that are released via the pituitary gland and through your autonomic nervous system, you actually then can respond to stress. And when this autonomic nervous system, the stress response system through the vagus nerve gets compromised, where you can't where you're too much in fight flight, or you're even in a freeze response, then this superhighway of yours, that gut brain connection, gets compromised as well. So what that really means is that the gut will get compromised in its function. So meaning the little gut microbes that you have, particularly in the microbiome, the colon, the large intestine, they are actually nothing more than part of your big communication system, which is what's going up in your brain and mind. So whenever you're stressed emotionally, mentally, or physically, that, through, again, that superhighway, the little microbes in your gut get compromised too. So then they are not producing the short chain fatty acids anymore basically, they're not producing the food very well. They're not basically producing the short chain fatty acids very well from the food you feed them. And they are not producing neurotransmitters and hormones very well for you either. Yeah, which again affect all your mental, emotional state through the superhighway. So the digestion shuts down too when those little microbes are not producing those short chain fatty acids very well anymore. And guess what? That those short chain fatty acids are actually your fuel for energy production as well. So you can get fatigued as well as a result. So anxiety, depression, fatigue, and gut issues, meaning bloating, flatulence, constipation, diarrhea, or the tendency between the two, what we call, irritable bowel syndrome these days, they are all results. So eating well, moving, sleeping well, those pillars of health just all have a huge impact, of course, on that gut-brain connection, our gut health, our mind. But if you are not changing your underlying mental, emotional stressors, this superhighway of yours, meaning your gut, your hormone health, and your mental health, will always take a toll, and you will only get so far.
Yeah, which is, I found out for the hard way. Everyone knows, I do these challenges and stuff, and, food-wise, I had it dialed in, I was rocking it, I was traveling the world, doing 30-day challenges. But just to open up to everyone on this call, on this little podcast here, there was a bit of a freak accident I had before I was doing a world tour, where there's glass in my food. I broke a bunch of teeth. When I got to New Zealand, part of my leg, I had 3 teeth abscess on my teeth, and the pain I was in was excruciating. And, walking through that airport, I actually picked out some Nurofen, and I never have Nurofen. I always had Panadol growing up, but Nurofen, I don't know why I grabbed it, but I grabbed 2 boxes of it and a box of Panadol. And on the flight between New Zealand and in the UK, I actually had the full 2 boxes plus a box of Panadol, and I've only got 1 kidney. So I'm lucky I even survived that trip, because my whole stomach bloated. I couldn't eat. I stopped. I don't think I ate for 4 days. I just had to stop eating. My body was in that fight or flight. I was breaking down. It was a crazy thing. I managed to do all my touring. I went to England, Germany, all these different places, and I ended up in Rome and just literally chilled. I was absolutely cooked. I was absolutely spent, but I survived it. But my body was wrecked because of it, and I literally spent the next 1 to 2 years. In a dark place, mentally, physically, competing wise. All my competing, I went from Dave Power to, low power Dave. I was, I could still pull it together for a competition and, pull off the numbers to win and stuff like that, but I didn't enjoy it. I absolutely hated it. It was not or did not feel right. I fell out of love with training. I got to the point where I got up to 100. I think I was 108 kilos at my heaviest, and I used to be 88. That's 20 kilos different. So even though I was eating good food, my gut, my digestion, and, you know, to even go further than that, and I'll talk about it, like a lot of people are afraid to talk about their stool and how their digestion works. But, you know, for like a good 2 years or so, I was not doing any solid stools, always had diarrhea. And it really concerned me because I taught this stuff in like how important it was. But for myself, I was experiencing the other end of the stick. And, you know, even though I was doing all the food, nutrition, all that kind of stuff, the underlying side of things, you know, I was basically compromised at that neurological gut level. At that time when I first saw you spotted straight away my liver and my kidney was compromised, and you know, it was I actually lost my vision at a point. That's where I ended up getting onto you. So it was all pretty wild how you sort of come into my life just at the right time. But for anyone out there, is like, you know, it's one thing to change your food and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes you've got to get to the deeper level with it. And that's what, you know, going through that session with you, Verena, did for me. And that, from that session there, just give everyone a bit of an idea, is one session with Verena now, and obviously everyone's going to be different, but that from that session, that next week, I dropped 8 kilos of body fat. Within that next week, no change in diet. When I ate food, it actually felt good. I felt energized. I didn't feel bloated because I would literally eat and go and sleep. I was sleeping so much of the day. I was that wrecked. And I actually started to sweat again. And I remember actually doing my first workout at Beach Fit in Bondi. I actually went and ran 5Ks, and I hated running, you know, seriously, like, but all of a sudden things started to feel good again. Life got brighter. My mindset, you know, I was in a very dark place. Now, if I didn't do all the work I've done on mindset and myself and personal growth and all that sort of stuff, you know, who knows where I could have been. But, you know, that really dressed like this underlying thing that kept sort of like, you know, people talk about the dark cloud and all that sort of stuff. That changed the game for me. And I think we've had 3 sessions now, Verena. So like literally you've changed my life, and anyone out there listening is like, it's, yeah, get a session and get to the bottom of it, because, you know, we all go through different things where things compromise us. Obviously we can make some proactive sort of changes, but this stuff is like the deep level stuff, which will be life changing. So Verena, on that, thanks for chatting about the gut health side of things there. One other thing I get a lot of people, and especially with older women, specifically, it is sex dependent, is menopause. You know, this is one of the things that, you know, throughout my gym experience, you know, I've gone through training a lot of different people, and predominantly a lot of my clients are women. You know, in my challenges, something like 86% are women. And, you know, in a way, it's a sad thing that there's not more guys getting involved with making changes. And, you know, I'm doing my best to try and change that, because women are open to things, you know, and they're great to work with. They want to learn, they want to take on things, they understand the importance of it. Where sadly, guys, I feel aren't quite there yet. We're a little bit more shut off. You know, I'm definitely working on it. But when it comes to menopause, I found a lot, especially in the country towns, the knowledge just isn't there on what to do, how to look after yourself, what it even means, you know, what's happening with the body. Verena, is there any sort of things you can share with anyone, you know, who might be listening to this, who might be pre-menopause or even post?
Absolutely. So first, I always say menopause is a really, really good check-in, depending on what symptoms you have. And I come to them in a minute, is really a good check-in how you've looked after. So menopause is, if as women, we want to thrive through menopause, which can be a very, very empowering age where we can actually access and share that deep wisdom that we have accumulated over 40, 50, 60 years. It's really about start early. And this is why your challenges are so great, because you get women there, is thriving through menopause starts already in our 30s and 40s. And, you know, when we are already menopause, we can still do something about it. But I always say it's the mother of all wake-up calls. It's most common symptom, hot flashes, of course. A lot of women get also the night sweats, the chills. A lot of women can get the insomnia, the mood changes, itchiness, constipation, dizziness, dry eyes, hair loss can be a big one, headaches once in a sudden. libido can be decreased. They can get quite depressed. So those are all symptoms. You can have one or more of them. So what happens in menopause is that your hormonal levels, like your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, your FSH, LH, they all change. But the big one that we probably have never heard about, you have probably never heard about it, and a lot of your listeners, is that the adrenal glands are actually the two little adrenal glands over your kidneys that are responsible for stress response. They are actually really taking over the production of your estrogen. And that can make you easily depleted when you don't have strong adrenals. So how do you know that you don't have strong adrenals? Well, just ask yourself, do you live on coffee or green or black tea or energy drinks or chocolate, a lot of chocolate to pick you up in the afternoon, or sugar, of course?
Yep.
Are you tired a lot? Do you not look after yourselves well? Are you a person that is constantly pleasing others, putting others always first and putting yourselves last, never filling your cup? Training, do you overtrain? Like, are you a person that works out every day for 7 days a week, or twice a day, 7 days a week? Your adrenals are definitely going to be depleted because you actually have not appropriate recovery time inbuilt. Another one can be, do you have trouble sleeping? Are you on the edge a lot, meaning you are explosive a lot, like getting angry? Then you're on the edge and depleted. Or are you a go person? Like, do you have really a tough time relaxing and actually sitting on the sofa for like 15 minutes on the weekends and just, staring into the blue sky through the window, or just closing your eyes and relaxing? Or, you say, well, I just can't read books, or I can't have a bath. It's just like, I'm too wound up for it. Then, your adrenals are depleted.
Yeah.
And, this may go hand in hand with menopausal symptoms. So the take-home message for everyone is to avoid menopausal symptoms and really thrive through that period of time, which, has this stigma of being so awful. I would also like for women to detach from that, because it can be it can be the best time actually in your life. So just be open to it. And again, look at it's really teaching you about what inner journey do I have to take? What do I have to basically look at that I have not looked at my entire life? So what are my triggers? What are my emotional, mental triggers that I have not worked with? I give you examples of, I still feel not loved by my mom. I still feel unworthy. I constantly got to prove myself, right? Yeah. Adrenal, like that adrenal kind of constitution, and really like pushing yourself over the edge a lot, has a lot with you to do. And now check in if that is appropriate for you and kind of resonates or not. Is like, do I feel worthy? Do I feel validated? Or do I have to constantly prove myself all the time and seek this in relationships? Or do I not feel loved? Do I not feel accepted? That can be by a specific person, or generally, that in relationships you get triggered with that. So those are really, really important things to check in where you sit. How much are you at peace with being your authentic self, basically? And
addressing the emotional baggage. It's like at that point where it's like, addressing it, not just holding on to it or suppressing it. Because I think during that time of a bit of an inner transformation, it is crazy that the normal in today's world is it's got to be a terrible experience. Like, I'll give you a bit of an example. Like, my mom went through hell with it, and she would even tell you herself, and then she got prescribed all these hormone drugs from the doctor. She got put on a drug that was then destroying her kidneys. And then she had all these kidney issues, blood pressure problems. Then she got put on more pills. And, for anyone listening, my big goal here to get my parents to see Verena and actually work with her. That's like my life goal, if I can buy them anything and things like that, it's to get them a session with Verena. And you know, the crazy thing with that, to see my mum go through that is heartbreaking, you know. And it's also for her is like, you know, to see my mum then be disheartened with things and then to go, oh, accept that life's going to get worse from this point in, you know, my life's over, you know, just to go through the pain of all that sort of stuff rather than being liberated through menopause and thriving through it and having those breakthroughs and really step into your power into that next part of your life, which it can be. Which is why I want to bring it up today, because I see so many women that sadly go through, you know, the punishing side of things, you know, then they feel like, you know, because they're not addressing all these different things, their adrenals and all that kind of stuff, is then they're putting more pressure on themselves that, oh, you know, I've put on weight here. So, you know, I've got fat gain because I'm not healthy in that sense. You know, then I'm flogging myself in the gym. I'm overtraining my body. I'm then restricting my diet even more. And if anyone listening, you can start to see it's a fucking recipe for it's destruction. You know, so
it is.
Yeah. So yeah, you go.
Because you go totally in, again, this fight-flight response. So I just give people a little bit of a context too, where they could say, but Verena, you know, it's not just the emotional and mental stress, of course not. So if you work on that, it's really like, say, for example, your menopausal symptoms, you really, you know, we look like, okay, what are the mental emotional stressors that are actually still there? Then we check out what are your deficiency on a physical biochemical level, because this is your car, right, that enables you to run. When you actually have the wrong petrol you're running on, and hardly any wrong, the incorrect petrol, and hardly any left of it, your engine is not going to drive well. So we got to look at all the deficiency. We're going to have to refuel you, and we have to see how your mental, emotional, and maybe physical stress, for example, overtraining or overworking or doing and pleasing others all the time, is impeding your vehicle, your engine, your body physiology to thrive. Because the example is, I had this, you know, lady, for example, coming in 3 months ago, where she's like, Verena, I cannot lose weight. So I'm training, I've been on the ketogenic diet for quite a while. What is going on? Well, when we looked at actually all her minerals in her tissues, we saw that her zinc and her magnesium and your chromium were out. Yeah. If you don't correct them, you can't lose weight. It's impossible, because your chromium is the number one important mineral for insulin regulation, glucose metabolism, and fat digestion. Yeah, I've never seen it that low in a person in 10 years. Like hers was just almost non-existent in the body tissues. Yeah, and because she was in a very big fight-flight state, where her magnesium and zinc were not working either. And, you know, those three minerals work together. So when one is low, the other one will be low too. And what was her emotional, mental stress? She couldn't, to this day, you know, in her 30s, late 30s, she could never have a successful relationship. She didn't have it with her mom and dad. She never felt accepted and wanted. She never felt wanted and accepted to this day. And she was in a total fight-flight as well, because she felt actually unsafe in relationships as well. So she could never relax in a relationship either. So that was, you know, affecting her minerals straight away. And after one session, she emailed me straight away and said, Verena, after just 3 days, the scale is moving. I already lost 2 kilos, you know, and I'm like, this is fantastic. So it's starting to move again, because we are addressing the root cause of her mental emotional stress and the underlying imbalances, you know. And you see, exercise and diet wise, we tweaked a little bit, but it wasn't the root cause of the issue.
Yeah. And that's like where I referenced earlier on in this podcast is like, just counting the calories and trying to restrict yourself and flog yourself more is in many cases like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It's fucking sinking, right?
Yeah, it's sinking.
We're going to address the hole in the hole who's let on the water. and here they are just trying to rechange the chairs. It's like, this fucking ship is sinking. Let's get to the bigger problems here. And then things become easier. So anyone out there who's been struggling with their fat loss, stress, all these kind of things, I hope that we're opening up your mind here to, the possibility to actually get to the root cause, to make the whole experience easier, and also to actually achieve it long term. Because, I can say is like, if you don't address these things, you'll just keep repeating things. And that's why so many people yo-yo diet. They lose it 1 minute, then they rebound, they go back to default. They don't reset the actual operating system, which is the big thing around it. So, Verena, we're going to start to wrap this chat up now, but I just want to thank you for what you do, the impact you've had in my own life. There's lots of different things you help people with. Can you just tell the people a few of the symptoms and issues and that you've helped people with? Like, I know, obviously, I've had your people that you've helped with depression and, my own gut issues and my own things that I've had go on. What are some other things that, you've helped other people with?
Yeah, definitely mental health. So anxiety, depression, trauma, so PTSD. I work a lot with skin issues, very hardcore chronic dermatitis, psoriasis, fungal issues on the skin. Then headaches, chronic headaches and fatigues, as well as, of course, all the gut issues, menopausal symptoms, all of that. That's probably the core, the core, I would say. Yeah.
And obviously through that, the people who want to drop body fat and they want to achieve their best weight, all that kind of stuff, that's the surface level stuff. A lot of people who have having trouble getting fitter, feeling like training's too hard, it's just taking more work than it should be. They're not enjoying it. They're not feeling good within themselves. So anyone out there listening to right now, all these little things, there's something at the bottom of it, the root cause. Get to the cause and changes the whole world. So the amazing thing, Verena, and what I do spend my time doing, and I will say this now, a lot of people don't understand it, but and I don't tell this, but my 30-day challenge is actually a mental and emotional reset for people in my own little way. Because growing up, I saw the detrimental effects of holding on to these things, thinking, how limited thinking and also just passing on trauma to other people can actually be detrimental, and just, it just goes through generations. So for my 30-day challenge, a lot of people don't know, but that's truly the reason why I created it, was to help people have the emotional, not just a physical, but emotional, physical, and mental transformations within themselves, and create that space. Obviously I do it on a little level, but for a lot of people around the place, and you go a lot deeper with that. And that's why you've been able to help me. So, but that's really the inspiration from what I do. Now, everyone talks about mental health these days and all that kind of stuff, and mental health awareness. I think right now we are fucking aware of it. Most people are actually feeling the symptoms, but what do they do? How do they get to it? So, Verena, just a few little tips for our listeners that are listening to it. First, the tip is get a session with Verena, but the next sort of tips, some things that people can do to help with their emotional, I call it like deloading and stuff like that. Is there anything off the top of your mind that people can do to help? How can you say, like a lot of people right now understand, and I hope that people listening to this understand, that the way we default back to during a stressful situation, all that sort of stuff, these are pre-programmed things. Sometimes they're not desired choices. Like anyone right now who understands that in a relationship, they just got a short fuse. They're just, repeating patterns, and they know that they're doing these things to their partners that they know they're not proud of. There's a bit of a quote, Verena, from Dr. Viktor Franklin from Man's Search for Meaning, a phenomenal book, where he says, in between stimulus and response there's a space, and in that space we have the power to choose. And I know that you've even taught me that the first step is awareness, because a lot of people right now are probably getting aware of a lot of things. The next step is to actually choose a different response, which isn't always easy. Is there any little responses that people can go to right now to create more awareness and also to help with that process?
Yeah, because as we said, awareness, then with the response, we want to respond where a lot of people are still reacting, not responding. So to respond, the first recommendation is start being kinder to yourself. So being kind to yourself is really pulling back because we live in this society where we are so programmed, go harder, go faster, do more, you know, fill your cup more. It's already overflowing, but I keep going anyway, you know? So pull back, because when you have breathing space and start filling your cup on a daily and weekly basis, you will actually be able, in those few seconds, you know, where you have that awareness, to respond and choose differently. So how that is facilitated to be kinder to yourself is take time for self. So start meditating, yeah, anytime. And meditation is not about, again, a goal to achieve. It's just purely, meditation is just all about spending time with self. You gift yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes, 20, once or twice a day. Start with a guided meditation, use the Calm app, and just, it's about laundering. Meditation is just about doing laundry with your mind. Yeah,
cleaning out the mind. Hey, a lot of people need to take their laundry out, don't they? we all.
It's just do laundry with your mind. That's all what it is, and it will create. You create more space, more buffer, you know, to respond differently. Do breathing exercises. Do very grounding things, like, you know, that nourish those connective tissue and fluids in your body more, rather than, you know, heating and just nourishing that muscle tissue, is like yoga. Go swimming, you know, go walking, not just high impact and strength training, like do also, you got to balance. Yeah. Like with everything in life. Then with eating, don't just focus on controlled eating, like calorie counting and, you know, very controlled of what I have to eat. What do I feel like?
Restrictive, can't do this.
Go
can't
away
do
from
that.
restrictive. Like, don't put yourself on the scale every day either. It's you know, you go into this negative spiral straight away. So really get in touch if you know once you know what is healthy, go instinctive from the list of what is healthy. What do I feel like eating, right? Not saying, okay, I'm gonna have like eggs on toast every day,
or I have to have this. You know, if I don't have this, I'm gonna get fat. You know?
Exactly. Like if I don't have my smoothie, I'm gonna gonna get fat. Then of course, connect to nature, you know, like get out there, not just training in the gym, like going for a walk, unwinding after work, you know, even if you're tired, go, because you're going to feel better afterwards. So then take care of your sleep hygiene. Yeah. Really get those 8 hours, and try to not be on devices and social media, you know, constant, because that comparison, and depending on how your feed looks like, you know, social media is actually a great way of showing you your triggers still. Yeah. It really shows you.
It's like a mirror. It's
like a mirror. What and who triggers me? And it's not about the person, it's about what are your triggers here. Look inside, and you know, but if you get triggered a lot, and once you're aware of what you got to work on, maybe don't expose yourself constantly nonstop to that, because it makes it more difficult to work on yourselves and be in that kindness towards self spot. So take time for self.
They're great. And like just touching on that, it's kind of like, you know, once you know your triggers and things like that, you then minimize your exposure to them. Because if we don't have exposure to things, we don't know what trigger us. So if anything right now in your life, if you are getting triggered by different things, be aware of it and then work on it. And obviously during that working on it, there's this old saying about there's this type of crab that, you know, like it's got this tough shell, but when it upgrades the shell, it then hides behind a rock until it does that process. So it kind of makes that change, how you say, under some cover, you could say. So obviously find your triggers, then start to do a bit of a cleanup. And Verena, these little tips here, I've actually got a 5-day free challenge that anyone can do, where we go through, where they choose what they want to do in those 5 days to be more aware of themselves, their emotions, like that sleep routines, you know, getting off social media. We do no social media in the 30 minutes before as waking up, and also before bed, getting to some reading, breathing, meditation, using apps, journaling, you know, doing some cold water therapy, where it's a shower or even ice bath, you know, whatever level you're at, sauna. So I've got a little free 5-day challenge for anyone out there. You can jump on through my Instagram or Facebook, some little tips. And Verena, you know, just to wrap off, I would love to, firstly, thank you for coming back on. B, thanks for being a part of my life and my journey and, you know, changing the game for me. You know, like, your help for me has allowed me to help a lot more other people as well and be in a better space, you know, a bit more of a fuller cup, you could say, because, you know, I was definitely, definitely that person who give and give and give and give. And, you know, I did pride myself on, you know, holding the most seminars in Australia, you know, doing the most people with challenges and, you know, being the first to do these types of things and all that sort of stuff. But there was definitely along the way, I definitely, you know, had some hiccups along the way, and, you know, you've helped me get back on track in many different ways, physically and mentally, emotionally and nutritionally, all these different things. And, you know, the changes I've had from your sessions, we've had 3 so far. And, you know, there was one year where I spent over $50,000 trying to get to the bottom of what was going off my body. And in one session with you, I saw the game just totally change. So anyone out there who's been struggling for a long period of time, you know, the great thing is for anyone listening to this, you know, if you're listening to this, you haven't given up, and keep searching, keep looking out for things. And I would suggest that you get a session in with Verena, or, you know, go find another neuro trainer. And you've actually inspired me. I'm definitely keen to actually develop myself even further and go down into that route as well. But Verena, any last words for anyone out there, or, you know, how can I get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me via my website or Instagram. So drverena.com, written out DUCTOR, Verena, VERENA, same handle on Instagram, Dr. Verena, one word, all written together. And yeah, you can get in touch with me there. I give a lot of advice, the advice that we talked about now, and the gold nuggets. A lot of those posts on Instagram, you can follow me there. I'm writing on a cookbook right now, which should be coming out by the end of this year, hopefully. So yeah, jump on. You also see I have a free fat burning ebook and anti-inflammatory food list on my website that you can grab for free to get started on, you know, working a little bit deeper if you want. And if you sign up to my newsletter, I provide some very specific inspirations and, you know, recipes and a lot of gold nuggets every month for my subscribers. So yeah, feel free to jump on there as well.
Yep, you're a wealth of knowledge. And I even think that, Verena, I don't think anyone's done it, but there needs to be a Thriving Through Menopause e-course, or at least program for you to do, or talk or something like that, because
we'll all be coming.
That's one of the biggest topics.
Yeah.
I'll be pushing you to do that. You know, like, I love drawing out the gold from people and showing them, you know, the ability and what they have, and you have all of that. So Verena, thank you so much for being on the Journey Less Travel podcast. For anyone out there listening, you know, this chick's absolutely amazing. A woman is absolutely amazing. And, you know, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today.
Thanks so much. Absolutely appreciate that you had me on and sharing, you know, whatever we talked about with your tribe. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, for everybody out there, you can do it.
Woo, pow!
Yay!
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. It was good.
No worries.